Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Fox, and today I wanted to go through the second part of my Destiny 2 series aimed at helping new and returning players get into Beyond Light to a point where they can comfortably hit endgame content, whether that is solo or within a group. So by the end of this series I'll have some builds out there for hitting the raid, for competitive PvP such as trials and survival, as well as the Grandmaster and Master content, nightfalls, that sort of thing, and hunts. This part of the build is the second part, and this is focused entirely around mods. Mods are an extremely important part of your build. They will dictate how easily you can deal with the endgame bosses, namely champions. They are by far the most dangerous enemies in the game, and you need to have specific mods for the most part to be able to deal with them. So I'll be going through which mods you want to look out for, where to get the mods, and just covering how mods work in general. So that's specifically your artifact mods, your generic mods that just go on your armor and weapon, and your charge with light mods. Finally, at the end of this video, we'll just look at a bit of synergy. So I'll give you a couple of ideas on, how you can get the most out of your mods and which mods have great synergy with each other. So part one, let's have a look at where to actually obtain these mods. Now, when you're at the tower, just go onto your map, you'll need to speak to a chap called Banshee. Banshee is the gunsmith in Destiny 2 as he was in Destiny 1. He's this guy just here, and what he would do is sell you different types of mods every day. Now currently, unless I am mistaken, they've removed the ability to obtain mods from the vendors now, at least anything outside of ghost mods, which we're not going to look at today because they're not important. Weapon and armor based mods are only obtained from Banshee and from the raid, and those raid ones are exclusive to the raid. They don't even work outside of it, nor do I think they're particularly good for that matter, so we're not going to be looking at those today either. These two mods that you see here, so at the moment he's selling Pulse Rifle, Scavenger and Rampage Spec. These are sold daily or whatever your reset time might be. You want to make sure that you check this every day that you have a couple of minutes to do so, because this is the only place to flesh out the mods that you don't have. The way you know which ones you have is by going into your inventory, your character, and going over to the Collections tab where you can see your weapons and exotics. Go into mods, and you can quite clearly see there are, well, first of all, there's nearly 300 total mods, so quite a lot to collect. But you can see that each different type of armor has different types of mods. So, for example, your head, your helmet essentially, has scavenger mods, ammo finder mods and targeting. Arms have loader and dexterity. Chest is reserves and unflinching. Legs are scavenger, and classes like your finisher stuff. Weapons also have their own mods as well, so you want to equip these based on the type of weapon that you have. For example, if you have a Rampage weapon, Rampage Spec would be the best mod to go for because it simply increases the duration of Rampage. So some of these are Black Armory mods that improve certain weapon traits. If you have a weapon with Dragonfly, equip Dragonfly Spec. If you have them with Surrounded, you can see where we're going. The most common ones here are probably going to be Boss Spec though, to be fair, and Minor Spec, you'll see those used quite a lot. So that's how you obtain your mods and where you can find which ones you already have. There are ghost mods as well, but as I said before, I'm not going to go into these as these don't really do anything to do with your build. They just improve your chances of getting XP, Glimmer and gear. So yeah, kind of good I guess, but we're not going to look at that today. So let's go into the second part of the video. We're going to look at the artifacts. Now in part one of this series, the first video, which I'll link in the description, I did explain how to get the artifact. Quite simply just going through the Beyond Light campaign will get this for you. You get a different artifact each season, and this does increase your power bonus based on the XP that you've earned. But what we're looking at today is the mod section. The mods in here are some of the most, if not the most important in game, as they have mods that deal with the 3 types of champions that you will experience in all endgame activity. That is barrier champions, so you need anti-barrier, overload champions, you need to be able to disrupt them, and unstoppable champions that you can stagger. What these 3 champions do is kill you quite easily if you don't deal with them appropriately. Particularly the overload champions, but they're all very dangerous. They all heal quite quickly, so if you don't have enough DPS and the right mods, then you'll just never beat them, and they will charge you down very aggressively. You'll only see these in the raid and endgame content, the places that you really don't want to see them, because they are far more dangerous than any other enemy that you'll come across, apart from maybe the final boss. The way that you deal with those is with your artifacts. So the first row is all of the mods that deal with those 3 different types of champions. The way that it works is these mods unlock an extra perk on the weapons that they state, allowing you to deal specifically with those champions. For example, the overload rounds, the auto rifle one here, Landing sustained hits on combatants with any auto rifle you are wielding causes disruption, which is how you break down overload champions. Delaying ability energy regeneration, and lowering combatant damage output. So if you don't have any way to deal disrupt against an overload champion, they will teleport like crazy, they heal through pretty much all damage, and they will gun you down hard. On the first row, you want to be selecting and purchasing one of each of the three to deal with all three champions. So overload, you can purchase either auto or scout. Anti-barrier, you can purchase either pulse rifle or submachine gun. And unstoppable, you can purchase hand cannon. I recommend having 3 here, if not 4, depending on the weapons that you want to use. If you're using weapons outside of what these dictate, it won't work basically. So if you're using anti-barrier pulse rifle and you've got an auto rifle, you won't be able to deal with the anti-barrier champions as easily. The second row is, and actually the third row, use whatever you want here. None of these are going to change your build in any way that's relevant. I find most of these are actually more suitable for PvPs. You've got like targeting and unflinching and so on, which are utterly pointless in PvE. So for me personally, as I use a lot of grenade launchers and shotguns, as they're both really powerful at the moment, I went into these 3. But honestly, these ones here, use whichever one you want. You need to purchase the number that's stated at the bottom to get into the next row. So for example, if I want to purchase from this row just here, but I don't have 4 mods already unlocked, this, even if I have you know, the available currency to purchase them, it won't let me do so, because you need to have 1, 2, 3, 4 in these first 2 rows to get here. You need to purchase 7 in the first 3 rows to get here, and you need to purchase 10 in the first 4 rows to get here. The way that you get these is simply by earning XP. So you see the total amount of mods I've got here is 12 out of 12. Every time you go up a level by earning enough XP, which is indicated by the white box in the centre, you'll gain 1 more, I don't even know what you'd call it, 1 more token to spend, I suppose. And then the outside, the blue one, is just simply your power bonus based on the XP you earn. So earn XP by doing your bounties. You slowly but surely unlock the ability to purchase more of these, and then once you purchase them, you can slot them into your armour. At any time you can reset your artifact, although this does cost an increasing amount of glimmer each time. Starting at 10k, I'm currently up to 62,500. The fourth row is, I would say, equally as important as the first row. So the second and third, don't worry about these, just buy whatever you need to unlock the next set of rows. But these ones, you definitely want to be getting thermal overload. This is one of the best mods in the game at the moment, as it allows you to disrupt overload champions. In my opinion, the most dangerous of the 3 by quite a margin. Just by throwing a grenade at them. If you run this thermal overload with Surge Eater, it'll actually allow you to instantly get your grenade back, so you've not even wasted a grenade, which means you can throw another one on the enemy, you can throw it at something else. So Surge Eater and thermal overload are your best friends here, and I'm also a big fan of Spoils of War. Very powerful if you're going to be hitting master content, which is 1300. If you're only at 1270 or 1280, you know, under leveled essentially, you'll probably be using a lot of heavy, and this is a great way to spawn heavy for your entire fire team just by finishing a champion. So also a very powerful mod. So try and unlock those in the fourth row. The melee based ones to stop unstoppable champions I don't think are very good. I've tried these out, they don't work very well. Sometimes they don't work at all, which I think it's just a bug more than anything else. But you don't want to be so close to an unstoppable ogre that you can punch it, because he will kill you instantly regardless of your levels. So yeah, don't worry about that. And then the fifth and final row, this is entirely your decision. These are not relevant at all to endgame content in the sense that you have to have one. The best one I would say is Unstoppable Shotgun, because it means you can just use any shotgun, exotic or not, and stop those unstoppable champions. But you know, this only costs 1 to slot, and this costs 7. Unless you want to run anti-barrier and unstoppable and technically overload on one build, which is how I've done my artifact, you don't need to worry about this one here. You might choose to go for this if you use your solar super a lot. Berserker is very good as it gives you a large amount of weapon damage based on how many kills you get with your super. So, you know, there are a few different ones you can choose. But definitely one of each type of weapon in the first row, and I would recommend the exact 3 that I purchased in the fourth row. The other 3 rows, choose what you want. Your artifact mods get slotted in specific places, so if we just quickly go back to that, let's say we're looking at using an anti-barrier pulse. You'll notice in the floating box you see in front of you, the title says anti-barrier pulse rifle, and it tells you what it does. But just below that it says arms armor mod. If I went down to this scavenger, it says leg armor mod. This one is a class item mod. That dictates where they can go. So you see anti-barrier pulses on my arms, grenade launcher scavengers on my legs, and the 2 that I recommended, Surge Eater and Thermal Overload, can only fit on my class. So just bear that in mind. If you purchase one and you can't find it, Just go back to your artifact, hover over it, and it will tell you where it goes. So that's your artifact mods. The generic mods we'll have a quick look at now. Now again, I'm not going to go through all of them because there is a sort of a large list as I showed you in the collections, but just bear in mind that each different type of armor has different types of ammo based mods. So I kind of briefly touched on this at the start of the video, but just to recap very quickly, helmets have ammo finders and targeting, so you definitely want to go for the ammo finders for your heavy weapon ideally. Your arms have your anti-barrier and your anti-champion stuff, so you are 100% one of these. I would recommend the anti-barrier at all times. And then you've got your reloader and dexterity. None of those are relevant for PvE, but the reloader one is pretty good for certain weapons. So, you know, not too important though. Your chest is your reserves, very important. So use the 2 weapons that you're using the most for reserves. I like to always have sword ammo reserves because I mostly use a sword, and then grenade launcher as well. Legs are scavenger, so because this is an artifact mod, this one is very cheap. Just bear that in mind, by the way. Your artifact mods that give you weapon benefits such as reload, dexterity, that kind of thing are usually very cheap. And of course you do need your energy here to spend, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, you can have these for all different types of weapons here. And then finally your class item is usually just your finisher stuff, but we don't worry about any of these because one, they're not very good for the most part. The special ammo one is quite powerful, but for the most part you definitely want to be running this combination of thermal overload and surge eater. The way that you slot these mods in is by improving or upgrading the energy. So you see mine say 10 energy on all of these pieces because I've spent a lot of materials doing so. If you're quite new to the game, you're not going to be able to get these up to 10. You might find that you pick up some armor and, for example, see this is at 7, this is at 2, and the way that you increase that is by highlighting over this part, and it will tell you what you need to do to equip a mod. So if I wanted to put on my anti-barrier pulse on this particular glove, and then I wanted to run a reloader perk for my shotgun, well, that costs 4. Or if I wanted to run a reloader perk for, I don't know, so you see these all have different costs here, 2, 3, 4. What I would need to do is, it says unused 1, I would need to actually spend the required components to create more energy. Now the higher you go up, this is only Glimmer and Legendary Shards, both very obtainable, then you start to go into enhancement cores, eventually enhancement prisms, and finally enhancement shards. Sorry, not enhancement shards, I forget what they're called now. Ascendant shards. Very, very expensive and rare items that you will only ever find in the absolute endgame content. So hitting 10 energy is quite hard to do, so you need to be quite sparing with which mods that you choose, so just bear that all in mind. You also have affinity, so you see this says 10 energy but it's void. This one is arc, void, solar. You can change those around in the very same menu just by going over to the affinity side. You can either choose just to start again at 1 energy, or you can just match it to whichever energy you currently have. But of course here you can see the kind of expense you'll have you know, when you're at 10. It's incredibly expensive, so just bear that in mind. So that's your generic mods and how to slot them and how to improve the energy on your armor to essentially slot more. What we'll now look at is your charge with light mods. Now these you only want to worry about once you've got all of your anti-barrier and all of your different artifact mods on here, so your thermal overload. If you've still got space available, you've got a bit of energy spare, you want to consider charge with light. There are several ways to spec into charge with light. What you want to look at is the 4th and final mod slot on each of your armor pieces. So the first one is always just stats. This is by far the least important. I won't worry about these at all unless you've put everything on your build and you've got some spare energy. This is the last thing you want to do. Your middle 2 are where your artifact mods and your ammo mods go, so these are probably the most important. And then I would say the next one that you want to do once you've got all of the stuff there will be your charge with light mods. So you see in the top right on that floating box, Lucent Blade charge with light mod. There are 2 types of charge with light mods. One that takes advantage of being charged with light, and you'll know which type it is because it has yellow highlighted text that literally says the words while charged with light. And then there are other mods that make you charge with light that have green writing. So you see it says become charged with light. So these are the mods, for example, taking charge is the most popular, I would say, that say become charged with light by picking up orbs of power. Pretty simple, run over an orb of power, you'll gain ×1 charge with light. This one I get charged with light for breaking a combatant shield. So these are the ones that allow me to become charged with light, hence the green writing. And then the ones that are yellow are what take advantage of that charge with light. So you want one mod that takes advantage of it, Lucent Blade being by far the most popular because of how meta swords are. They are very, very powerful. So this particular mod, you know, if you don't have this, you can get this from Banshee when it comes into rotation. While charged with light, dealing damage with the sword gives you bonus sword damage for 5 seconds, consuming 1 stack of charge with light. And we've even unlocked the secondary part of that, which is greatly increases the charge rate of equipped swords. Some of these mods do have secondary parts. The way you know that is by reading the description above. This mod's secondary perk is active when at least one other arc mod is socketed into this armour, or when at least one other arc charged with light mod is socketed into another piece of armour. Now, I don't have another arc mod slotted here. You can tell because it has the blue arc mod here, and this is obviously an arc piece of armour. These are just generic mods, they're not arc. So the reason I've unlocked the second part of this is because I have another arc charged with light mod here. This particular one means that I become charged with light by rapidly defeating combatants with a pulse rifle, which is the weapon that I'm using because I've got anti-barrier pulse. So this is starting to come into the synergy part here. They don't have to be in the same piece necessarily, but just because I've got 2 of these arc mods, it means that I've unlocked the secondary part of them. So this particular one here, the secondary part means that I can actually generate special ammo for all of my allies just for getting pulse rifle kills. So again, this comes back to the synergy part that we'll be touching in a moment. So just to cover my build, I've got Lucent Blade because I'm using the Lament, which is basically the best weapon in the game at the moment for boss DPS. So Charge with Light is the charge with light mod. Lucent Blade is a charge with light mod that takes advantage of being charged with light, and then becoming charged with light by using Swift Charge, which, you know, getting multiple kills with the pulse rifle charges me up with light. I've got Shield Break Charge, breaking a combatant shield with the matching energy. I've got Taking Charge, just running over an orb, which is pretty easy because Masterwork weapons generate orbs, and obviously my super and other people's supers do as well. And then I've got Blast Radius, which means getting multiple kills with grenade launchers, charges me with light. And the grenade launcher is my secondary. So that finally brings us into the mod synergy part. What you want to do is essentially what I've done, and that is to create a build that synergizes very well with the weapons that you are using. So for me, I'm running the 2 different arc charge with light mods because 1, they enable the secondary parts for them, but 2, they fit very well into the weapons that I'm using. Lucent Blade is going to buff the damage of my sword, and with the secondary part increase the charge rate. But Swift Ride is going to charge me with light by getting multiple kills with my pulse rifle. I'm also using anti-barrier pulse, so that pulse rifle is already ready to break anti-barriers. And the good news is that it even goes through non-champion barriers as well. So you know the Cabal Phalanx that have the shields they put up in front of their face? This shoots right through them because it's anti-barrier. The Taken versions shoots right through them. So the Vex Hobgoblins that go immune when you shoot them and do that orange glow, shoots right through them as well. So this is why there's a lot of synergy with this build. And because I'm not the secondary part, I generate special ammo for my allies. I've got the improved recharge rate on my Lucent Blade. And then the other stuff that I've got is to charge me up with light to take advantage of that. I'm also running the scavenger mods for the weapons that I'm using. So for example, on my boots, I have grenade launcher scavenger just here. And then what I could do as well is have sword scavenger as well if I didn't want to run this particular mod here. I don't need to because I don't run out of sword ammo, but the point is that you pick stuff that complements the build that you are using, and the build and weapons that you are using should be reflected by your champion mods, so in this case anti-barrier. If I wanted to change this, say I went into the raid which only has overload champions, I would switch this to overload, but that's only on auto rifles, so I then maybe want to consider switching this to a different mod entirely. I might instead go for Radiant Light, which is when I cast my super I cause nearby allies to become charged with light. Or, you know, I may choose to put on the auto rifle version, become charged with light by rapidly defeating combatants with auto rifles. So you just change it based on the weapons that you are using, and then all I would do is I would just swap this out to this one here, and this now means that this creates overload. So it's very easy to customize your builds and create that synergy. Just make sure that you are using the anti-barrier mods first. That's the most important thing to slot on. The second most would, I would say, be the thermal overload and Surge Eater, because these are a way to deal with overload champions in the raid and in Nightfall content and, you know, just endgame content. And then after that, just equip the ammo stuff for the weapons that you're using. So grenade launcher scavenger, or maybe sword scavenger, grenade launcher reserves, sword reserves, grenade launcher loader, grenade launcher ammo finder. So you see where I'm going with this. Everything I've got on here is either benefiting my grenade launcher or my sword, and that's including the charge with light mods. And then of course I've got the swift charge and the anti-barrier pulse to benefit this. So it all links together to create a build that does more damage, that is constantly charged with light, that generates ammo for my allies, and yeah, just kind of fits in well. So that is pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. I know there is quite a lot to go through in mods there, and it can be a little bit confusing. I've not even touched on the weapon mods, and I'm not going to too much today because you can really get away with running whichever ones that you want. Just make sure if you have, make sure that they do complement the weapon. So if you have a weapon that you're reloading all the time, you might want to go for a backup mag to increase the magazine. If you have a weapon that's very unstable, counterbalance stock. I almost exclusively run minor spec on my primary ammo weapons because, quite simply, it deals more damage to rank and file enemies, which is the red and orange bar enemies. You then get major spec and boss spec, which are usually better for your special and your heavy. So yeah, weapon mods are a lot more simple. They don't really change it too much. It's more about your armor mods and what you can have here that can really sort of improve and enhance your build. So that brings us to the end of the guide. If you do like the content, please do like and subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. As I said before, there's a few more videos to come out in this series yet to get you all ready for endgame. I'll then be releasing some build videos. I've already cleared the raid multiple times. I quite frequently hit competitive Crucible, PvP, so I've already got some appropriate builds for all of that. They'll be coming out in the near future as well. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.